APCO Supercars Championship begins a new season this weekend at Mount Panorama with a pair of 250-kilometre races for the Bathurst 500. Lots of new faces in new places with no shortage of drama as well. The face of the championship, Shane van Gisbergen, left Supercars for NASCAR, and Brodie Kostecki isn't competing due to an ongoing legal dispute with Erebus Motorsport. With SVG gone from Triple Eight, Will Brown will replace him as Brock Feeney's teammate. Replacing Brown at Erebus is Jack LeBrock, while Todd Hazelwood takes Kostecki's seat. Photo courtesy there of Red Bull and Pole Racing. Now, given the turmoil happening over Erebus, can Triple Eight take advantage of this and reclaim their spot as the top team?
Easily, Josh. Easily. I think Triple Eight has had the most, I guess, uneventful offseason that you can possibly have. But losing Shane van Gisbergen is a big deal. The top driver in the series, one of the best that you've ever seen in the Supercars Championship, and replacing him is not going to be easy. Will Brown coming in, I'm sure he's going to feel a lot of pressure to perform. He's definitely no SVG, but Will Brown certainly has a lot to prove. He was looking like one of the championship contenders last season who could really take the fight to his former team, to his teammate Brodie Kostecki at the time. But when the second half of the season came around, Will Brown just basically fell off a cliff and he was really nowhere. So Will Brown is going to this team, Red Bull and Pole Racing, replacing SVG. It's going to be quite a challenge for him. It's going to be interesting to see how he works alongside Brock Feeney. But the good thing is, they've already been working close together over the offseason, trying to get the chemistry going. Feeney and Brown ran a Triple Eight Mercedes in the Bathurst 12-hour last weekend. So that's very helpful in getting the team chemistry going and making sure that they can hit the ground running this coming weekend when they get in their supercar and try to go out there and do what Red Bull and Pole Racing knows best, fighting for wins, podiums, and championships. And I really think that this could be the year where we could see this team get back on top, especially with all the turmoil going on at Erebus Motorsport. We don't really need to go too deep into that because we've been talking about this story for the last few weeks. And Erebus, they recently just showed their new livery for this upcoming season, and it's very, very interesting. Has a lot of white on it, and have like some sponsors, but it is quite a departure from the Coca-Cola racing entry that we saw last season. And in 2024, it's going to be quite a challenge for Erebus to try to overcome everything that's happened with Brodie Kostecki drama that's going on behind the scenes with Brodie not being with the team, and then losing Coca-Cola and other major sponsors as well, and the team pretending that everything is okay to the public when it's really not. So there's going to be a lot to look at this year. Can Erebus overcome all of the drama that's happened in the last few months or so, and can Triple Eight get back on top?
Yeah, indeed. Really looking forward to this weekend. It's still very strange that we start the season at Mount Panorama. We did it a couple of years ago when we were in the pandemic, but we're back again this time because of Newcastle Street Circuit going away. We're back for Bathurst 4-2 races at the weekend, the 50 Bathurst 500. Can Red Bull take the fight to pick up the mantle from last year? The original question, certainly you would think so. It was kind of Erebus versus Red Bull for most of last season, apart from at the end of the year when we had a little parity shift and Ford came back into it with wins for Cam Waters and Matt Payne towards the end of the season on the two street tracks at Surfers Paradise and Adelaide. There has been all the parity stuff going on over the winter. Hopefully, everything crossed that we don't have to go through the season that we did last year with all the parity chat, because after a few rounds it just got very, very tiresome. We can get underway at the weekend. Everybody's on the same spec as such, and the Fords can be closer. Erebus, as you said, Kobe, that they're carrying on as if nothing's happened, apart from the fact that the cars looks completely different. It's gone. Any Supercars fans from back in the day will remember when Jim Beam disappeared from Dick Johnson Racing after James Courtney left. They had a sort of a white and black livery for most of that season as they tried to scramble for sponsorship with the whole Charlie Schwerkow fallout in 2010-11, whenever that was. It's a bit of the same as that, white and black car with some sponsor stickers all stamped over it. Two new drivers in the team. Jack LeBrock looked like he was going to come in there as a real solid number two to Brodie. And as we know, and as you mentioned, and we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, Kostecki is not there. Will he come back for the Grand Prix, which is the next round, the Formula One Australian Grand Prix support races? We'll have to wait and see. but he's missing for this weekend, and surely Red Bull and Pole 888 will be the ones to beat at the mountain this weekend. But it's going to be interesting to see how close Erebus will be, and as I said before, how close any of the Fords will be over this weekend.
Yes, another big change happening is Tickford Racing downsizing from a 4-car team to a 2-car team. Cam Waters and Thomas Randall remain with the team, but James Courtney has moved over to the Blanchard Racing team, and Declan Fraser has signed with Brad Jones Racing as an endurance driver. Now, due to rivals departing, Waters is expected to have one of his best chances to win the championship. We also saw Randall grow significantly as a driver last season and earned his spot on the grid for 2024 by showing his potential. Now, do you see the downsize helping Tickford become more of a threat to win races?
Surely it streamlines the focus for these two, who were by a long way their 2 lead drivers last year. You mentioned Courtney and Decker Fraser moving aside. So they've been a 4-car model at that team for a very, very long time. And they have, this, as you said, this has got to be Waters' best chance. Randall was very impressive at times last year towards the back end and the season before, and has been on pole positions and got podiums to his name now. It'd be great to see Thomas get up there and get a win. There's a cool story. He battled his way through the junior categories and got his way up there, was almost on the cusp of getting into the championship, then had a bout of testicular cancer, which he overcame a couple of years ago pre-pandemic, but he's fought off that, and here we are. He's in the one of, if not, you would say maybe the joint equal best Ford team, along with Shell, DJR, with a real chance to go at Red Bull. He's picked up the Coca-Cola backing that has disappeared from Erebus, by the way. It's a Castrol Coca-Cola livery for Thomas Randall this season, which looks really, really good. But Tickford, the streamline has to be their, as you say, their best chance. Can the monster car of Cam Waters lead the Ford charge? We will wait to see.
Yeah, man, I totally agree with you. I think Tickford downsizing to a 2-car team is definitely for the best. And anyways, last year when we saw Cam Waters and Thomas Randall on track, they were always the 2 leading Tickford cars. And then I always jokingly said, looking at James Courtney and Declan Fraser, are these the 2 R&D cars? Because they always seem to be way off compared to Cam Waters and Thomas Randall. And now that you're downsizing the team, you can add more personnel to Waters' team and Randall's team, and you can truly try to iron out what all the problems have been in the last few years and try to make these cars a lot faster. And I think that downsizing can only do wonders for Waters and Randall. I think that they could really be a threat to win quite a number of races this season. And it would not surprise me if we see one of those Tickford Racing Ford Mustangs battling for the championship, since it's wide open this year. Yeah, but I think Tickford definitely made the right decision to downsize here, and we'll see throughout the course of the season if it's going to pay off.
Yes, another team that could challenge Tickford as the top 4 team is Walkinshaw Andretti United. Like Waters, Chaz Mostert as well has a chance to stake his claim on this championship, with this year being wide open. Mostert will have a new teammate this year, with rookie Ryan Ward replacing Nick Perscat as well, who moves over to Matt Stone Racing to try and save his career. Meanwhile, the Shell V-Power of Dick Johnson Racing drivers Anton de Pascal and Will Davidson look to rebound from a down year. So the question is, can Mostert be a serious title contender this year, and will Dick Johnson Racing improve on last year's results?
I'll start with the first part of that question. I think Chaz Mostert can potentially be a championship contender this year. We know he's definitely a top driver in this series, and if Walkinshaw Andretti United can give him a car to let him do his thing, I really think Chaz Mostert can really solidify himself towards the top of the grid. And like I said, he has been a top driver, but the cars he's been in, it just hasn't lived up to Chaz Mostert's standards. So I really think that the team over the offseason needed to go to work and try to build them faster cars to try to put Chaz in the best possible position to be successful. Yeah, and looking forward to seeing what his new teammate Ryan Wood can do. Watched him last year in the Dunlap Super 2 Series. Saw some good things for him and stepping up to the main game this year. That I think that's a young driver who has a lot of potential. I'm sure he's going to be leaning on Chaz a lot this year. And Dick Johnson Racing, the second part of that question, I think we could see some improvement from the team. Last year was kind of weird, first year of this new Gen 3 car, Dick Johnson Racing, they've always been one of the top teams in supercars. But last year, kind of had quite a down year. We didn't see Anton De Pasquale, Will Davison up front mixing up like we have seen them in the past. And it'll be interesting to see if they can bounce back in 2024. I think they have the potential to, but last year is a year, they definitely don't want to see happen again, considering everything that organization has accomplished.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Kobe. On Mostert, he's got the team around him now. And apart from winning the Bathurst 1000 a couple of years ago with Lee Holsworth as his teammate, really hasn't kind of gelled really together over a consistent period. He has lost his long-time engineer, Adam DeBore, though, over the winter. He's shifted off to another team in Super 2. So it's going to be interesting to see how Chaz goes with a new engineer through this year and how quickly they can gel together. And Ryan Wood, his teammate, as you mentioned, he's been terrific in his 1 year in Super 2, got a couple of victories at Perth last year and really did stand out as one of the shining stars to watch coming through. So good to see him getting a main game seat. Totally agree with Adam, and that's what we're saying. The championship is wide open this year. As for DJR, they were the Ford homologation team last year, and it just never came good for them, apart from Anton's win in Townsville, where he had a bit of a tyre advantage. Let's not forget. They were a bit anonymous. I really don't remember Will Davison being at the front of the field at all last year. So they've really got to get around that team and get it pushing in the right direction, because a couple of years ago they were the Form 4 team. Scott McLaughlin won championship after championship and a Bathurst with that team. The 1000 race, not the 500, of course, which we've got coming up this weekend. But they've really got to kick on, and I think if they've got the parity right with the Shell cars, Mostert and Waters, we can have a good bunch of Fords up there against the Red Bulls and the Erebuses of this world.
All right, Matt. Before we move on to the next thing, I wanted to add one more point about Dick Johnson Racing free agency heading into 2025 is going to be very interesting looking at that team, because they have young Kai Allen, who's a lot of people think could be a star in a supercar series someday. And if Anton De Pasquale, Will Davison, they don't perform this year, one of them or even both of them could be out after 2024. So, and we have someone like Kai Allen who has this great potential to do great things in supercars someday. Like he might be the next best option for Dick Johnson Racing if one or both of their drivers are underperforming. So I think that's the storyline we'll have to follow throughout the season.
Yeah, exactly. And for Will, I mean, he's at the back end, a little bit twilight of his career. So if it's continuing to be on a little bit of a downward slope, and they've got Kai Allen, who I would think, I'm not entirely sure, but I would imagine he's doing Super 2 again this year, is still there and banging on the door, a bit like we talked about with Kimi Antonelli a couple of weeks ago at Mercedes in Formula 1. If he's there and going, hello, give me a ride, please, they may shuffle the deck for next year. It's a good point you bring up, Kobe. That's another little wind of the storylines that we're going to have to keep our eye on for the year.
Those 4 teams will be very interesting to watch this year as well, but don't sleep on Grove Racing. Matt Payne got his first win in the season finale in Adelaide, and his new teammate Richie Stanaway replaces Team 18 bound David Reynolds after winning the Bathurst 1000 last year with Triple A as SVG's co-driver. Now, based on how the Penrite Fords ran last year, especially towards the end of the season, it wouldn't be a surprise to see them mixing it up at the front. So will Matt Payne and Richie Stanaway surprise some people in this coming season?
Stanaway, for sure, will be one to watch this year. He has a Bathurst 1000 victory and a Sandown 500 victory to his name in his, albeit short supercars career. He was in full-time a couple of years ago with Gary Rogers Motorsport. It didn't work out, and he didn't make it to the end of the season. He was benched towards the end of the year. But this is a guy that's been at Le Mans with Aston Martin as a works driver. He's won races in Formula 2. He is no mean peddler, and he will be very, very quick. As I said before, if the Ford parity is where it should be against the Camaros this year, then we will see both those Penrite cars up the front. Matt Payne broke through at the end of last season to win the final race of the year at Adelaide, much like Brock Feeney did the year before. And we saw how well Brock Feeney's second season as a full-time driver went last year. So do expect both of those guys to be in the conversation for race wins as the year rolls through.
Yeah, for sure. I was very impressed with Matt Payne during the second half of the 2023 season. I thought we really watched him grow up from the start of the season towards the end, and getting that victory in Adelaide, that was really huge, and a lot of great momentum that he's going to be able to carry into the new season starting this weekend with the Bathurst 500. And I think Matt Payne certainly has a great future in Supercar. I think he can establish himself as one of the top drivers, and to see the improvement Grove Racing's made with their program, I think Matt Payne is in a really good place. And some people were disappointed that Triple Eight decided to sign Will Brown over Richie Stanaway, especially after Richie did a great job in his co-driver role at Triple Eight. But I still think Richie Stanaway is in a really good place as well. He's still going to be in a competitive seat. He's still going to, be in contention to finish in the top 10, top 5, and maybe potentially win some races. Like you were mentioning, Richie Stanaway is a really good race car driver. You don't become an Aston Martin factory driver, for nothing. Yeah, he was a factory driver at Aston Martin. We saw him racing open wheel cars in Europe and finding some great success there. So, and now he's coming back to supercars after you mentioned, first stint didn't really work out. So I think Richie realizes the opportunity he has now, and we'll see Matt Payne and Richie Stanaway certainly surprise some people this year. I think this is a very exciting driver pairing to keep an eye on this season.
And given all the star power that we've already talked about, is Supercars still in good hands despite Shane van Gisbergen and Brodie Kostecki not being on the grid for the season opener at the Bathurst 500?
Yeah, I mean it's not ideal for your defending champion and Brodie Kostecki to be absent on the grid. I'm sure Brodie wishes he could be racing this weekend, and it's really unfortunate that we're not going to see him be in contention for this year's championship. Even if Brodie were to miraculously return to Erebus for the Grand Prix race weekend at Albert Park, he by that point he already missed 2 races, so the championship would basically be over for him, so he wouldn't have a chance to go out there and win the championship, which is obviously frustrating for any race car driver. And Shane van Gisbergen left for NASCAR. Scott McLaughlin left a few years ago for IndyCar as well. So the only past champion, we only have one past champion on the grid now. So not having those championship drivers on the grid, I know in past episodes of Grid Tonight we talked about the face of the Supercars Championship. And what is Supercars going to do with all their top drivers, leaving and all of this? But we've already talked about a great handful of drivers tonight who can truly establish themselves as the face of the series. As Adam said in his comment, Supercars is wide open right now, and anybody can step up to the plate, and replace the the star power that we've seen from the Scott McLaughlins, the Shane van Gisbergens, and the Brodie Kosteckis of the world. Just talked about Matt Payne, Richie Stanaway, 2 great young drivers, Chaz Mostert, Cam Waters, some great veterans of the series. Thomas Randall, great up and comer as well, and Brock Feeney, another great young driver, and Will Brown has shown great potential as well. So I think the series certainly has a lot of talent heading into the 2024 season, and I think it's still going to be an exciting championship, especially now when you're looking at who you're going to pick for our pick of winners this year. A lot of people, traditionally pick Shane van Gisbergen every single week. Now he's not here, and a lot of us were thinking this year we're probably going to pick Brodie Kostecki every single week, and now he's not here. So who are we going to pick now for pick a winner? It's completely wide open. Maybe we'll have to ask Joe to give us a Supercars Wheel of Destiny to try to pick a winner this year. Yeah, maybe we'll see a lot more parity this year than we've seen in recent years. And gonna catch up on some comments here in the chat room. Right here from John 82 says that even as an Aussie, those Kiwis can sure pedal. And then Lindsay Weston says that your work with Stanaway, you've always thought he had a complex about him. You say like he thought he'd come in and compete at Tickford and then got smashed. And then you also add that New Zealand has a good junior series. Yeah, the talent down under Australia, New Zealand, it's just fantastic to see how great those drivers are. And this season of Supercars, I'm really excited to see what we have ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. As you mentioned, Kobe, we've got no Scott McLaughlin, no Shane van Gisbergen, no Brodie Kostecki. Further back than that, no Jamie Whincup, no Craig Lowndes on the grid. The big names have all kind of departed the series in one shape or form. And we've got this new bunch of guys now with, as Adam said, it's open. We've talked about it before on the show. Mostert, Waters, Feeney, Brown, Stanaway, Payne. There's so many guys that are going to be up there trying to win races. Todd Hazelwood's got a great chance this weekend to really make a story. The door has been opened for him. His supercar door was kind of closed. He was coming back to Erebus as a endurance driver for Sandown and Bathurst later in the year. He's doing Trans Am, and I think he's doing Porsches as well this year on the support bill. And now he's got this great chance at Erebus. Really, if he can get on the podium a couple of times across the weekend, and then if he keeps in the seat at the Grand Prix and continues that form, then it's going to be huge for him. So looking forward to seeing how that goes. I think the Supercars, the series is in good health from driver talent standpoint. They just need to let some of the drivers be themselves on television and in interviews and on podcasts and whatever else, because they're a great bunch of guys, and they're a little bit. We saw the whole Shane van Gisbergen thing at Newcastle last year, where he was told to keep his comments to himself about how the new cars were performing and such like. We touched on it on the show at the time, but let's hope they've learned from that, and the cars are all better, and we can get on with the show this weekend. Good evening to Matthew Owens behind the mic. He says it's been a NASCAR-like mass exodus with Gordon Stewart, Kenseth Earnhardt, and when Johnson left, it's time for Supercars versions of Larson, Elliott, Blaney, and Byron to show up. And I don't disagree with that. And me and Kobe have mentioned your Ryan Woods, your Kai Allens, Jet Johnson coming through as well, with a big name, family name coming through. So the melting pot of the Supercars driver pool is there. Let's hope they can pull some irons out of the fire this year. And with those big names at the top end of town gone, if the parity is right, I keep mentioning we need to see if this parity is going to be right this year. We could have a tremendous Supercar season. Let's hope that we do.